The budget provides new tax incentives to encourage the world's lowest carbon, I'll repeat, the world's lowest carbon LNG facilities.
We've got a problem here. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Yesterday, Mark Carney announced his major projects tranche number 2. And, well, the question must be asked, did he choose these projects for Canada or for himself? Today, we'll be focusing mostly on the KSI Lisims LNG project because it's the one with the juiciest details and the biggest problem. Let's jump into this.
Each of the projects that we're referring to the major projects office today in and of itself is transformational. The bigger point is that their impacts will be amplified by being part of bigger national strategies to boost Canada's competitiveness, including to realize our country's full potential as an energy superpower, creating new trade and economic corridors that diversify our economy, projects that help build Canada's leadership in critical minerals to increase our independence, and also projects that we won't discuss today, but projects that establish our data sovereignty so Canadians can be served safely and securely online.
The reason why, obviously with the boom of AI, we're going to need that, but also because Brookfield is heavily invested in that. I have an entire section here on data centers, which is this whole area down here. That's why we're going to need nuclear power. And through Brookfield Infrastructure Partners here, basically all of these ones here, Compass Data Centers, Center Square Data Center, and you can see the flags here where Brookfield is invested in all these. And I should note, I've never really mentioned this, but all the yellow ones are Brookfield or Brookfield projects. So if they're light yellow like this, it's either Brookfield-owned company or project they've worked with another company on. All the darker ones here you can see are Brookfield or divisions of Brookfield, Brookfield Asset Management, Brookfield Business Partners, Brookfield Residential, Brookfield Property Group. So all these are Brookfield companies or companies Brookfield has business with. Data4 Infrastructure France, Ascenti Latin America, Digital Connection India, Swedish AI Data Center. So that's why Mark Carney is going to be announcing something for this because, well, Brookfield's heavily invested in data centers.
Now, Canada, let me start with our position as an energy superpower. We're starting to realize our full potential in both conventional, i.e. oil and gas, and clean energies. LNG is an essential fuel for the energy transition. LNG can help Canada build new trading relationships, especially in fast-growing markets in Asia.
Throughout his entire speech here, which goes nearly an hour, it's all talk like this. Net zero, low carbon this, low carbon that. That's all he talks about. He's rolling out his net zero agenda here. He tried to hide it, tricked Canadians for the election, and here he is today. And now, full disclosure, I think we should be doing LNG. I just don't think it should be rolled out how it's being rolled out. As you're going to be seeing here, I've been doing some digging. I know what's going on. So first off, KSI Lisims LNG. This project is one of the ones up here on the coast of British Columbia. This project is being funded by a couple of companies, Western LNG out of Vancouver, who's owned by Western LNG Houston, an American company. Is this elbows up or is this elbows down? I can't remember. Which way does it go here? We've got Rockies LNG, which is a Canadian producer consortium, and Niska Nation. So essentially the three of these together are going to be funding this with the federal government tax subsidies, tax breaks for this project. Just so you can see, I'm not talking out of my butt here. Niska Lisims government here, Rockies LNG and Western LNG. And this is also on the website here. You can see Niska, Rockies, and Western LNG. Here's the map of the project itself, project location. This project has a couple of complications. First off, two First Nation bands are suing them. As we have here, First Nations in BC make legal challenges to huge KSI Lisims LNG project. The Laxkwalams Band and Metlakatla First Nation have filed separate judicial reviews. This is a major infrastructure project, and we've got bands suing over this. Like, this is a joke. You would think they would sort this situation out before making this announcement, because is this even going to go forward? I mean, look what's going on right now. We've got land being stolen by First Nations in British Columbia. Not only that, we have hospitals being renamed. Couch and Health Facilities, new name, Huatsun Hulet Tuetsunhua. Now, sure, if they're paying for it, by all means, but they're not paying for this. Taxpayers pay for this and then just renaming it. This only adds confusion to the locals who already know what the name of this hospital is. That's the first point. The legal challenges makes this a joke. Second off, Western LNG, as I mentioned here, Western is a Houston-based company. How does this sit with Mark Carney and his supporters? We're supposed to be elbows up and we've got an American company funding LNG. It's just fine. Bring their money in. Come on in. But the fact that Carney's backing this is a joke. The elbows up crew not buying anything American, buy only Canadian. Now we're supporting an American company for an LNG facility in Canada. Not only that, Carney has to approve these projects. He has to approve these ones too, like the Tech Resources buyout here, Anglo-American. Donald Trump wants our resources and critical minerals. He could easily work this into a deal. He's not even trying to get a deal anymore. Western LNG completed a private placement of equity securities. The funding fully supports remaining development activities KSI Lisims LNG Prince Rupert Gas, etc. It's interesting that Mark Carney picked a project that has such a big investor that is American. How does that sit with Liberal voters? The most important information here is not Western LNG, but who's funding Western LNG. And it says right here, the private placement was anchored by commitment from Blackstone Energy Transition Partners, an affiliate of Blackstone Inc., with over 1.1 trillion in assets under management. Blackstone's participation underscores investor confidence in the viability and strategic importance of KSI Lisims LNG port. Now, who's Blackstone? I have them on my chart. If we scroll up, there it is, Blackstone. So I've redone a lot of the chart now, moved things around because we needed more space. And yeah, you can see this goes directly connected to Donald Trump because the CEO and chairman of Blackstone, Stephen A. Schwartzman, chaired President Trump's Strategic Policy Forum in 2017, donated $33.9 million to Republican candidates. I've seen some reports of $39 million. He's a top donor to Donald Trump. And this is the project that Mark Carney chose to give tax credits to work with as a major infrastructure project. Now, as a conservative, I got no problem with this. By all means, let's do it. Bring in more American companies, bring in Swedish companies and Japanese companies, whoever, it doesn't matter. Bring them all in, have them build more stuff here. But for liberals, how do they square this? We do have a major problem. This isn't it. I'll get to it in a second. Blackstone CEO's Trump bet pays off as his number two plays powerful hedge. Schwartzman backed Trump after previously splitting with him. CEO now well positioned to influence business and tax policies. Steve Schwartzman's early endorsement of Donald Trump is proving to be a canny wager. Blackstone Inc. chief's pledge in May to vote for change and root for Donald Trump marked a turning point for Schwartzman, who had previously distanced himself. So it goes on to talk about their relationship here. It says Schwartzman, 77 years old, donated $39 million to conservative caucuses during the election cycle, according to Open Secrets. This gets even juicier when you see stuff like this. Blackstone and Goldman Sachs CEOs see upside to Donald Trump's policies. Who's someone we know that is a Goldman Sachs guy? It's Mark Carney. Yeah, Mark Carney. He even ran a division of Goldman Sachs there for a year or two before he quit. Not to mention Tim Hodgson, Doug Guzman. Comments from Wall Street bosses come as president's import tariffs fuel U.S. recession fears. Two of Wall Street's most prominent executives said there are upsides to Donald Trump's policies, even as the U.S. president presses ahead with protectionist measures, including import tariffs that have fueled fears of slowdown in the world's largest economy. Stephen Schwartzman, chief executive of Blackstone, told reporters in India on Wednesday, and this article was written back in March 12th, 2025, so like 6, 7, 8 months ago, that the tariffs would, at the end of the day, lead to significant increase in manufacturing activity in the U.S. So Schwartzman is behind Trump on this, the tariff policy. So now that you see Donald Trump's connections with Stephen A. Schwartzman, with Blackstone, this company funding Western LNG, which is funding this KSI Lisims project Carney just announced.
By 2040, it's estimated the global LNG demand will rise by 60%. And Canada will be ready. We're home to the world's fourth largest reserves of natural gas. And we have the potential to supply up to 100 million tons annually of new LNG exports to Asia. But that will require major investment across a wide range of infrastructure. And to encourage that investment, the budget provides new tax incentives to encourage the world's lowest carbon, I'll repeat, the world's lowest carbon LNG facilities. And the budget also expands the Canadian Infrastructure Bank's ability to support projects like KSI Lisims LNG.
We've also got this oddball connection here, Apollo Global Management, led by Liam Black. He actually had to resign due to his connections with old Jeffrey here. Finance Committee discovered documents stating that the true amount Black paid to Geoffrey Eggstein totaled $170 million, $12 million higher than previously identified by the Apollo's board investigation. There's been no explanation why Apollo's board investigation failed to identify these payments. So they had some sort of deal they had to strike there. He had to do a payout. And so Leon Black is a billionaire here, financier, co-founded Apollo Global Management. He's one of the largest private equity firms in the world. Apollo controls and has stakes in massive companies across energy, infrastructure, media, defense, and credit markets. Black was long considered one of Wall Street's most influential power brokers. And Apollo Management Group also funds Western LNG Houston, which is the main company. It was interesting you have these ties to old Geoffrey Eggstein, obviously Donald Trump, the files that the Democrats have put out showing connections between Donald Trump and him, and also Mark Carney and his direct connections through his wife's sister, the Roth Copperwick's directly tied to Joffrey Eggstein. They're all connected, these guys. They're all global elitists connected one way or the other, even if they're on opposite sides of the political spectrum. Now that we've looked at the connections between the KSI Lisims, Western LNG, Blackstone, and Donald Trump, now it's time to look at Mark Carney's connections. And well, there's a bunch of them here. First off, we're looking at connections between Brookfield and Blackstone, which is why I had to reconstruct this board here. So originally I only had this connection here. So Blackstone and Rogers. Blackstone agreed to buy 49.9% of Rogers. This was going back a few months ago, a $7 billion deal. You can see here the transaction expected to close Q2 2025, which means Mark Carney had to approve this. And of course he approved this, as you're going to see here, the connections with Blackstone, because, well, if we go to the left here, Rogers, well, who sits on the board of Rogers? Old Jack Cockwell. Jack Cockwell is one of the original creators of Brookfield. His holdings, Peter Bronfman, the Bronfman family holdings, were brought together and they created Brookfield. From the Bronfman family is Stephen Bronfman, this chief fundraiser and senior advisor to Justin Trudeau, involved in complex offshore movements of millions of dollars. And we got another connection here with Navdeep Bains. This is a former Liberal under Justin Trudeau who moved on to the role of chief corporate affairs officer at Rogers. These guys are all connected. And that's just Rogers. Let's go the other direction here. So we got Blackstone. They purchased this from Brookfield Lab office portfolio sale. Blackstone Property Partners Life Sciences acquired a 2 million square foot lab office portfolio from Brookfield Real Estate Fund for $3.45 billion. We've got Trizec Properties acquisition 2006. Brookfield Property and Blackstone jointly acquired U.S. office REIT Trizec Properties in a big leverage deal. We've got Blackstone Property Partners and QIA. This is bringing the Qatari money. It's not a coincidence Mark Carney's going over to the Middle East next week.
Okay, folks, we've just gotten some breaking news from the Prime Minister's office. We are hearing that the Prime Minister has just announced he's going to be traveling next week from November 18th to the 24th for a bilateral visit to Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates. This, of course, is to push for further trade agreements and bolstering the ties between these two countries as a result of the ongoing trade war with the United States. And then, of course, he is headed to the G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg, South Africa. The Prime Minister is saying the UAE and South Africa represent two of the world's largest emerging markets, and the G20 encompasses 85% of the world's economy. Canada's new government is focused on creating high-paying careers at home with new partners, new deals, and new investors to build Canada and to build Canada strong.
So icky listening to this, her reading off Carney's slogans on national television.
That Anita Anand, while she's at her foreign ministers meeting in Niagara, does have a meeting today with Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. But it's been made clear that those two will not be addressing the issue of tariffs. All of this.
Yeah, nothing's going to happen there. The reason why Carney's going over to the Middle East is because there's a lot of big funds over there, sovereign wealth funds that want to invest in this eco-green climate nonsense, and he wants a piece of that. Brookfield is already heavily invested with the Qataris. As I've mentioned many times, 666 Fifth Avenue, this came from Qatari money. We've got Brookfield Property Owners plus QIA Manhattan West Development. Brookfield and QIA, Qatari Investment Authority with Songbird Estates, Canary Wharf Group, as well as Preferred Equity Securities. We've also got this one here, Brookfield Middle East Private Equity Fund. Mark Carney's going to check on Brookfield's funds. He's the Brookfield Prime Minister. This is the Brookfield Party. It's not the Liberal Party, it's the Brookfield Party. And liberal buffoons got duped. They voted for a Brookfield Party. Mark Carney's going over there to see if he gets some of that Qatari money, have that flow over into Canada so he can jack up the value of his catalytic transition fund. That's exactly what he's doing. There's a lot of money to be made over there working with the Qataris or the Saudis. I mean, we see Eric and Don Jr. here. That's the first thing they did once Donald Trump became president again. They went over there, signed all these deals, Trump Dubai Hotel, Binance Crypto, Siam's Resort. These all become intertwined too. We got Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the royal who is the current ruler of Dubai. He's directly connected to the investment corporation of Dubai, Dubai World. Dubai World is established under the decree ratified on the 2nd of March 2006. He's also a stakeholder in Dubai World. And Dr. Sun Yun Chang, an independent director at Brookfield Infrastructure Partners, is a board member of Dubai World. These guys are all linked. They're all connected. Brookfield invested in this ADNOC Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. Consortium of investors has signed this $8 billion agreement. Mark Carney's going to check in on Brookfield's business operations over there.
The Prime Minister is reaching into his Rolodex to find new partners to invest in Canada's major projects.
Our Prime Minister is very well connected globally to not just political leaders, but to corporate leaders, leaders of significant investment firms, sovereign wealth funds.
Silism comprises a new gas pipeline, a new electricity transmission line, and a new floating LNG export facility. Led by the Nisga'a Nation under President Ava Clayton, KSI Lisims will become Canada's second largest LNG facility with a capacity to export 12 million tons of LNG every year to new markets. It'll also be one of the world's cleanest LNG operations, with emissions an incredible 94% below the global average, and with the potential to reach net zero by the end of this decade.
This deal here between Blackstone and Brookfield for the One Manhattan West. Blackstone Real Estate bought 49% stake in Manhattan West, a flagship NYC office tower from Brookfield and QIA at $2.85 billion. And on top of that, there are other properties I didn't want to move over here because they make sense to where they're sitting on the chart here, such as this one down here. So Brookfield purchased this from Blackstone, the Sunbelt multifamily properties. Brookfield bought 8 Sunbelt apartment properties, 4,000 plus units from Blackstone's REIT at $845 million. As we see here, $845 million portfolio, 4,000 units. This is in Las Vegas. Not just Las Vegas, in Phoenix, Columbus, Ohio, Charlotte, Capitol Hill, North Carolina. This is all American. Remember earlier, we were talking about data centers. Well, we've got this one here, Hotwire Communications. Brookfield purchased this from Blackstone as well. Brookfield Infrastructure Partners struck a deal to buy internet service provider Hotwire Communications, valuing the company at around $7 billion. So you can see Brookfield and Blackstone have lots of business together. They're competitors, sure, but they're allies as well. And we know this because Stephen A. Schwartzman wanted Mark Carney on his team. Check out this interview here from Frank McKenna. If you don't know who Frank McKenna is, let's jump over to the board here. I've got him here. Deputy Chair Frank McKenna of TD Bank. The same Frank McKenna you can see here that agreed to a $3.1 billion settlement over allegations of facilitating money laundering for the street candy cartels during McKenna's tenure as deputy chair. This is the same guy who got Mark Carney into Brookfield. In 2020, McKenna, as chairman of Brookfield, brought Mark Carney on board as vice chair to lead ESG investment strategies. So this is the guy speaking about Mark Carney, seems to know a few things about the guy because he brought him into Brookfield. And listen what he had to say on this. So this is right on TD's website, TD Securities. This is a podcast here. I clipped this on my second channel just in case they delete this stuff in the future.
And he brings a global class pedigree, whether that's worth anything. I think it could be. Stephen Schwartzman, who's the CEO of Blackstone, competed to get Mark Carney with us at Brookfield. And he told me later, he said, you guys got the number one talent on the planet. He said, that guy's got a Rolodex. He could call anybody in the world and they would take his call. So you're right at the top of the heap in terms of influence. So is that a positive for a country? Certainly we have a person who's got an extraordinary private sector and economic background pedigree and crisis management pedigree, but with very little political experience. And I think in terms of political experience, he'll be roughed up by Poilievre in debates and on the campaign.
Yeah, so he goes on saying campaign trail, which he's right. This guy talked about Mark Carney. He's highly desired by all these investment bankers, all these big funds, because Mark Carney, he's a smart man. Unfortunately, he's using it against us here. How can any liberal look at this and think, yeah, he's working for Canada? I mean, all you need to do is look at this one number here and see that he is not working in Canada's best interest because he has no interest in doing that. So that came directly from Frank McKenna saying that Stephen A. Schwartzman obviously respects the guy, highly wanted him at Blackstone. So you can only imagine that Mark Carney would want to work with Blackstone any which way he can. And that's what we have here today. Blackstone funding Western LNG, which is funding KSI Lisims LNG project. But don't worry, it gets better. Because Stephen A. Schwartzman here, he hasn't just heard of Mark Carney. He knows who Mark Carney is. These two met with each other at the WF. This is even on the government's own website. Foreign Affairs Minister concludes successful meetings with public and private sector leaders at World Economic Forum, 2019 Davos, Switzerland. And here we have the minister held bilateral meetings with business leaders, including Michael Evans, president of Alibaba, Steve Schwartzman, CEO of Blackstone, as well as Mark Carney, governor of Bank of England. Now, these guys know each other. Mark Carney knows what he's doing here. He's doing more business. What Carney's running here is not the Liberal Party of Canada. It's the Brookfield Party of Canada. And if that isn't bad enough, and for the Liberals watching out there, if this doesn't convince you that Mark Carney isn't working for Canada, then maybe we should just go over to his stocks here. Mark Carney's list of assets. And if we zoom in here, what do we see? Blackstone Group. Mark Carney's invested in the very project he's going to give tax credits to.
And to encourage that investment, the budget provides new tax incentives to encourage the world's lowest carbon, I'll repeat, the world's lowest carbon LNG facilities.
And one that you're invested in. This guy's invested in Blackstone, which is the major funder of Mark Carney's new major infrastructure project he's taking on. This is literally an investment Mark Carney's invested in, and he's using our tax dollars to fund it. This should be against the law. This is so preposterous. Not to mention all these other connections here. His connections with Schwartzman and Blackstone and Rogers and all these other companies that Blackstone has done business with Brookfield. This is all highly conflicted and corrupt. Somebody tell me how this is okay. How is this acceptable? Any of the liberals out there, are you okay with this?